Welcome back. I'm Michael Storm, the anarchist of comic books and co-owner of Amazing Fantasies comic book shop here in Topeka, Kansas. And wherever you're finding the video today, please do us a favor and click or tap or smash that like button. Give it an optic blast, whatever you have to do to get that thing to pay attention to you. Let us know that you're out there. It's one of the biggest ways that you can support us for sure. I'm really excited about this. I haven't, and when it came up that DC was starting up Mad Magazine again. They've held on to the property for a while now. I've talked about Mad before in the past, and magazines in general. And you know that I'm a fan of these types of magazines, these anthology types of magazines, even if they're just sort of humor like Mad Magazine, or if they're more like heavy metal or something like that. And there's been a resurgence in these magazines over the last couple of years, and it's been nice. It's been enjoyable. It's been fun. Mad Magazine had lagged behind, though, and it had been a long time since they had done any real new content. A little splattering here and there of content that was new, but otherwise, for many years, they had just been reprinting, if they were even printing anything at all, the sort of things from the 70s and 80s. So Mad Magazine goes back to 1952. That's when it was formed by Harvey Kurtzman and William Gaines, and of course it's just iconic. It's been around forever. Satirizing pop culture and politics, and the mascot, the toothless mascot guy, Alfred E. Newman, just famous. Everybody knows it, and of course the usual gang of idiots, and that's what they called the creators, and that usual gang of idiots is amazing because it had creators like Mort Drucker and Sergio Aragonés and Al Jaffe and Don Martin and Wally Wood. It's just amazing some of the names of people that were responsible for creating Mad. And so in 2018, I guess, they officially released their final issue, number 550. And then they had just been doing some sort of, they've had a digital presence. They're on the internet and the social media, and you see them pop up every once in a while making a comment on something, trying to keep themselves relevant, as it were, which has been a struggle for many magazines because of the inability to produce something that is particularly timely. When going to print. With digital, obviously you can just jump right out there as soon as something is happening, and get in there and say something about it, and keep yourself out there in the forefront of people that are commenting or whatever it happens to be about things that are current. And when you're talking about satirizing politics and pop culture, you have to be pretty current. And so they really weren't. I don't know, I guess it just seemed to me that they just were never really able to find a way to do it to satisfy that niche. But you top that off with the fact that less people are reading in some senses, and in certain things certainly they're reading less of, and it's just a place that struggles to find readers that you keep them and hold them like you used to before there was such instantaneous media. But it's been really amazing, with heavy metal and some of the other magazines that have had their resurgence over the last couple of years. And so when they came up with this thing to do a Mad About DC presentation, and this was going to be really an introduction to a reintroduction to Mad Magazine, and bring Mad Magazine back with about 50% new content or something like that, I was all over the idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. You know me, I've been questioning why it is that Marvel and DC don't have regular spaces for anthology work, whether it's something like Mad or something more like what you would expect from them in the past, that's more story related as to humor related along the comic. Whatever it happens to be, they're just not doing it, and they're not farming the new talent through these places, and it's kind of a bummer because you don't get to see the different takes and the different approaches and the shorter stories and things that don't necessarily tie to something else. They don't necessarily have to be historical and canon and this, that, and the other thing. They're just spaces for people to be freely creative, and we need that more now than ever with technology being able to, I'm using the Nixon quotes here, create things. And so it's wonderful to see this happening. It's wonderful to see it happening with Mad. They put together this Mad About DC. It's a 62-page, big old heavy book. It's fantastic just from cover to cover. Chip Zdarsky is the guest. Zdarsky. I threw a D in an extra place in there somewhere. Chip Zdarsky. He's the guest editor and sort of presenting an idea of how it is he's gone through his life, and people sort of respond to him when he mentions that he's a comic book creator, that he creates comic books for a living, and how that the only thing worse than that apparently is being an employee for Mad. And that really launches the whole thing. There's just tons of stuff in here from cover to cover. You get the 5 people you meet at cons, classic Mad jokes like Harley meets Ambush Bug. That was just great. You have Guy versus Spy instead of Spy versus Spy. It was Guy, Guy Gardner. There's some Mad fan casting, including the likes of Greta Thunberg as Poison Ivy. Can you imagine the way she is with the climate and everything? Yeah, she's right up. She make a perfect Poison Ivy in some senses, right? There's just some great comic book satire in there. Deep cuts like Dial H for Hero. That goes all the way back to 1966. That's almost as old as Mad itself, because that's one of those great storylines that isn't necessarily around anymore, right? Their story isn't out there. It's not being told. Every once in a while there's a hit on it or something like that, but there's no regular Dial H for Hero that's being put out there. And ever since its debut in House of Mystery, and just the idea behind it, the idea of any normal person being able to sort of dial up a hero persona and become a superhero and save people. Just more amazing stuff all throughout it. What if you slabbed and graded humans like we do comic books? Sort of comic book characters from comic book fandom. The good con guy, the guy who's good at going to cons, who's one of the ones that you don't have to run into and worry that you're going to regret attending the con. There's plenty of Wonder Woman bondage jokes and Superman bathroom jokes and jokes about Batman and Robin and jokes about the death of Robin, and there's satire for everything. Satire for commercial, satire for the culture of comic books, how you make comic books, the comic book creators themselves. There's a mail order merchandise page that makes fun of the types of things that you would find in mail order advertisements in the back of comic books over the years. There's funny news and headlines. There's classic Mad looks at whatever. In this case, I think it was Batman villains and their alter egos, who they would be or could be, and some of the comic book characters or comic book creators who their alter egos would be. Really fun stuff. Some superhero fashion. The comic book convention utility belt. Has some hand wipes and a leaky pen to sign stuff with. Just wonderful. There's a Mad fold-in, of course. All of this then leading up to what is going to be a new launch for Mad Magazine with a bunch more new content, and I'm really excited for it. And this one, this Mad About DC, will be available this Wednesday in your local comic book shop. If you are liking what you hear here, if you were ever a Mad reader before, if you've never picked one up before and you don't know what to expect, either way, it makes no difference. I think this thing could be for you. Certainly this is. We'll see how the relaunch goes, but this Mad About DC, this is classic Mad. This is classic, great satire and humor. It's exactly everything you want from something that calls itself Mad Magazine. You can pick up a copy this Wednesday at your LCS. If you don't have one of those, I guess you can always hit me up. I know it happens. There are only about 2,000 stores in America at this point, as it is. Amazing Fantasies is where I'm at. If you're ever in Topeka, Kansas, stop by and see us and say hi.